Microsoft, I don't even know what to say, Pat. I mean, my bullish sentiment here could not be more validated by this particular quarter's results. Satya Nadella is absolutely crushing it at every corner, getting everything right. I've got one maybe hiccup, caveat, question mark in their entire business right now. 22% year on year. This quarter, everybody sort of felt that with inflation, with supply chain, with labor shortages, with sort of a return to normal, that these earnings were going to not be as good. And Microsoft, is diversified as it is, it's got a mix of enterprise and consumer. It's got cloud. It is unfazed. Biggest growth in 3 years after last quarter's biggest growth in 3 years, 22% on the top line. It beat on earnings. It's Azure business, again, over 50%. I keep saying 50%, eventually it's going to have to fall. And it had a momentary blip where it dipped into the mid 40s, and then the last 2 quarters back over 50%. Azure is on fire. And then you've got, the productivity business, Pat. You got Office. LinkedIn is growing at breakneck pace. And by the way, kind of an unsung hero of Microsoft is that LinkedIn and that gold mine of data that they have acquired. And everyone kind of forgets that Microsoft is a social company. I mean, you've got the social developer community in GitHub. You've got the social business community in LinkedIn. So yeah, sure, they don't have an outrage platform for political discourse, but in terms of actual meaningful mine data for enterprise, Microsoft is a absolute rock star right now. Across its different segments, it had growth. It was green in every area except for, I believe in the last quarter in the Windows OEM and Xbox content had a slight decline. The Xbox stuff was maybe a little more surprising, but supply chain's holding it down a little bit. In Windows OEM, it's constraints, supply constraints. That was actually gonna do it. But you had areas like search growing 48%. You had Office and commercial 20, Office 365, 25, Dynamics 33, and I believe Dynamics ERP, that the cloud version's in the 40s. So it's actually growing at about twice the rate of the ERP and CRM, the CRM and service clouds of Salesforce. So big numbers there, Pat. I'll take it home here. I don't know what I've left, but my only beef has been, I don't understand why Surface has done so poorly throughout the whole pandemic. This quarter actually kind of made sense because of what happened with supply, but it had another double-digit decline, and it didn't grow as much during the pandemic. And Pat, I use Surface. I love the product. Why are they not able to grow more? And you work a lot closer with that team, so maybe you can even answer that with your response.
Yeah. So first off, they're barely in the top 10 of unit volume. Okay. Yep. Just because they're Microsoft. And the other thing I'll say is that Xbox is not necessarily high volume compared to PC. So they might do really well with Xbox and have some volumes there, but the biggest volumes is in the PC market. And if you're barely in the top 10, you are going to get scraps, even if your name is Microsoft. So that is the reason. And companies like Dell and Lenovo have just run rampant across the entire supply chain when it has come to PCs. I mean, who comes into earnings the last 6 weeks and doesn't even, it's funny, they talk about supply chain and their earnings, but it was just like, it was the additional 10% they could have sold, right? Not the 25% growth they had before. So yeah, that is the reason. I mean, Surface has the most competitive line I've ever seen for Surface. Ever, and it's been over a decade, right, that they've been in business, but they just can't get the goods. They're not being held up by leading edge silicon. They're being held up by things, USB controllers and PMICs and stuff like that. But let me dial out. It's interesting, Daniel. Your conversation juggled some things in my brain, and essentially, Microsoft is taking advantage of the biggest things in the marketplace today. And, if you look at cloud, right? Cloud, and I put it in air quotes, up 36%. Azure Plus, and this is a new one that I need to get underneath. Azure Plus other cloud services, I don't know what that is, at over 50% growth. That 50% is obscene. I think on a percentage basis, not only is it higher in number, but the growth dollar, I think, may have been higher than anybody out there. SaaS is hot. Dynamics 365 and all its capabilities, 48%. And listen, you and I are always impressed with how NetSuite's doing, how Fusion apps are doing on SaaS at that 30% growth rate, but 48% is just absolutely obscene. I was a little disappointed with Office 365 coming in at 17% growth. Isn't that funny? Disappointed at 17% SaaS growth. Maybe they're starting to peak on Office. Who knows? We're gonna have to see. What's the other trend? Everybody quitting their jobs. Where do most people in the West go to go start looking for a job? LinkedIn, up 42%. Pretty crazy. And by the way, to your whole Microsoft is social, the one thing you didn't talk about, because you were talking about enterprise, is Xbox Live is one of the biggest social platforms, albeit for gaming, on the planet. So yeah, they're very much a social, even though they're not stirring up, political ire with the type of platforms that they end. And I'm going to end this on Xbox hardware, up 166%. We're not even before the holidays here, folks. That is absolutely insane. I don't think that's just channel fill either. I think there's some real end user pull. And I don't think it's, the million Xboxes sitting out on a barge out in the San Francisco Bay or something. But no, overall, just crushing it. And I think if I dial out and look at everybody and how they did, if I had to pick a winner, it'd probably be how Microsoft did this go round.